You only care because they died violently. Millions die daily, but this is special. Why? Because it's interesting, that's it. Wake up. God, now what do I do the video on? Do I do it on the David Leavitt to Beaver guy, or on the more famous Onision? David did it better. Liberal or conservative, have no fear. Whatever your beliefs, I'll wail on ye rear. That was terrible. Hey everyone, this is Irishman Rants, and I'm here for my first ever rant video. Now today, May 22nd, 2017, was a terrible day. Zack Snyder opened up about his daughter committing suicide. There was a bombing in Manchester that killed 19 people and injured 57 people. And the worst of all, I had to watch Hocus Pocus.
Oh, dude. Tubular.
Now, that joke is awful. Just no doubt about it. But David Leavitt would find that joke hilarious. And here's why. So, as many people know, during an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, there were 2 explosions that many people are saying are a terrorist attack. Because of the attacks, there have been reported 19 casualties and 57 people injured. Freelance writer and gaming journalist David Leavitt, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, he doesn't deserve to be pronounced correctly either way. He tweeted at 3:56 p.m., from Boston, Massachusetts, multiple confirmed fatalities at Manchester Arena. The last time I listened to Ariana Grande, I almost died too.
Just one of those days when you don't want to wake up. Everything is fine.
Now, I personally find this tweet to be pretty offensive. I'm a person who's very much for politically incorrect humor, but I do realize that there's a line you don't cross. Or more specifically, there's timing. As many people have said, especially comedians, timing is everything with comedy. And this was a failure of timing. I mean, it's fresh in everyone's minds. It had just happened 2 hours ago when this tweet was made. So, probably when everyone's searching for their kids, because, you know, there's mostly just teenagers and children at this concert, and a bunch of parents are wondering where they are. Probably not the best time to tweet about how terrible Ariana Grande's music is. He then tweeted a recurring joke, as many people have said, as Parker Malloy. If you remember Parker Malloy, she's the trans writer who told another trans writer to kill herself, but that's not the point. Parker Malloy pointed out that he then went on to use his patented dad joke, which is, oh God, honestly, for over a year I thought an Ariana Grande was something you ordered at Starbucks. Okay, the next tweet that David sent out was, check my phone and got this message from Twitter. Try swearing at me now. So he's gonna filter out the swearing. You know, for someone who just made a bunch of insensitive comments about the Manchester bombing 2 hours after it happened, being concerned for swearing on your timeline is a pretty pussy thing to do. And then he finally comes to the realization, and this is where he becomes woke or something, I guess. Too soon? Oh my God, maybe I was wrong. This is bad. Oh my God. Okay. Ooh, Ethan sent me something. 7:22 p.m. Almost 3.5 hours later. He paid the ultimate price for it. There was so many replies to his tweets. Just a ton. Like thousands upon thousands. Because everyone just came together from all walks of life. From your E. Miles Cheons to your Parker Malloys. Both sides of the spectrum. Just came together to say, fuck you, to David Leavitt. Alright, so the next thing he says is, sorry for offending, didn't realize the magnitude of the tragedy, I always make stupid jokes about whatever's trending, condolences to families. And you know it's super serious because he spells 2 with the number 2. and 4 with the number 4. Really? Really, dude? You didn't understand the magnitude of what was happening? You know, you're the same guy who opened up the tweet by saying numerous casualties or whatever. And you're saying that you didn't understand the magnitude of what happened? You knew what was going on, and you still made the tweet. I think I mentioned this on a live stream one time, but I once had an episode of a podcast I was doing, and it was filmed the morning after the night attacks in Paris. And I didn't think of anything of it until I read the newspaper. And I found out that, hundreds of people had died. And I ended up realizing that now was not the time to, do my podcast on the new, I don't know what album, like a Gambino album, whatever. I need to do a podcast about the tragedy. I needed to say serious things about the tragedy. And so I did. And this guy, he opens with saying the news, but then decides to make light of it. This is the same sort of guy who sees Zack Snyder's daughter committing suicide and still going, yeah, but Sucker Punch was a terrible movie. Nobody cares if Sucker Punch was a terrible movie. What matters now is that this guy is in mourning. And then he tweeted in perfect grammar, I've delete the tweet since so many people asked. And so he delete the tweet and now everything back to normal. God, this guy needs a Jamie Foxx conscience. Honestly, for over a year I thought an Ariana Grande was something you ordered at Starbucks.
I just did another joke that didn't go over. I'm your conscience. Am I fucking up right now? Maybe I should say something nice and wrap it up. Yeah, that'll get him on my side.
This is such a pyrocynical ripoff. As many people pointed out, David Leavitt lists himself as a freelance writer for CBS, AXS, Yahoo, Examiner, and etc. So many of the organizations that he says to be associated with ended up denying that he was associated with them in any way. Basically saying, yeah, this guy, he's kind of a cunt, so we don't harbor cunts on our station. So don't worry, guys, everything's taken care of. As they should have said, because if I had a person who followed me and said some unpleasant things about like a member of maybe Channel Awesome, I would probably want to not associate myself with them, or at least try to talk them out of doing something like that, and that totally happened this week. But either way, I think this guy is an asshole, a huge one at that, like a very ripe asshole. This guy got a lot of flack for these tweets. I'm kind of glad that he did, because they were offensive jokes. I'm a person who doesn't believe that someone should be, like, executed or something for a bad joke, but this was very much offensive. There's a time period where you think that a joke could probably be made. Or you realize what kind of person you are, what kind of persona you have, and that's when you get to make those jokes. Like, Best of 4chan made a joke about the tragedy when it was happening and said that it was proof that we don't need more masks or something like that, when ISIS hasn't claimed responsibility for it.
Shame, 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 shame on you.
Yet. But even that tweet from a very offensive Twitter account was still a bit too soon, because this is something that's fresh in everyone's minds. I think I remember Rob Lowe tweeted about the Paris attacks around that time, and he ended up having to go on a terrible roast with Ann Coulter and to make up for it. But either way, what do you guys think about this? Do you think he was right to delete his tweet? Do you think he should have backed down? And why are you a complete fucking idiot for believing that? Do you think that there is a line you shouldn't cross with humor? Or do you think there are no boundaries, but there is a sense of timing that needs to be acquired for a joke to be funny? And that's kind of where I am in the camp. This guy should probably wait maybe a year for this tweet. Maybe that will have been maybe like a couple months for this tweet to have been released. But on a serious note, many families are still looking for their children. So there's a hashtag going around called Room for Manchester, and it's basically any people who are affected or were affected by the tragedy, people who were concert goers at the time, can have room to stay at while they're in a frantic state, because many people are still looking for their families. If you are in Manchester, I pray for you. So anyway, this is going to do it for the first video for Irishman Rants. David Leavitt, you should have just leave it to best of 4chan. And fuck you.
Shame, 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 shame on you.
Oh, but before I go, Onision, you are not the banana.